I have a question for you Christians. Why did Paul murder people? Have you ever wondered about that? You hold the man in high regard, higher than you hold Jesus, in fact, and ignore his murderous nature. So I'm guessing you've never even considered this question. Let me ask you now, was Paul evil or was he ignorant? As we know, Paul claimed to murder ignorantly. That's kind of hilarious to me. Yeah, I murdered all those people, but I didn't know any better. I'm just that ignorant. Paul supposedly knew the law, right? He had read Thou shalt not kill. He probably had that written on a piece of vellum in his phylactery. He also claimed to be a super duper Jew. He declared himself blameless with regard to the law of Moses. He said he was a Hebrew among Hebrews, and he was brought up at the feet of the famous Gamaliel. One would think he'd know that murder was wrong. I think we can look at this in two ways, and we'll consider both of them. The first way is to see the law of Moses as having given Paul the right to murder any Jew who defected from Judaism. That's always a possibility. After all, the law does say if your brother, son of your mother, your daughter, whatever, comes to you and tries to get you to worship somebody else, you don't do it and you don't have pity on them and you murder them and your hand's to be the first one against them. So if someone tried to get Paul to convert to Christianity, he had a clear right to murder the person by the authority of Yahweh. Paul was a Jew and he had to live under this law. In fact, even Jesus would have been required to murder any person who tried to sway him from serving only Yahweh. Yes, even if the person was a son or daughter, both Paul and Jesus had this right and this obligation. That's the lovely rule of the lovely Yahweh. But I brought up the fact that the Old Testament gives permission to murder renegade Hebrews, and some Christian called me on it. The person said that no, the Hebrews could murder only someone who tried to convince them personally to leave Judaism. Christians don't like to think that their God said to murder the infidel. Well, even if the law does allow this, it's still evil, and it doesn't help Paul in this particular situation. If he was looking to this passage for his authority to do his evil deeds, then he went beyond what was written. Paul wasn't just murdering people who were attempting to sway him from his religion. He went into people's homes and dragged them out into the streets and put them in prison simply because they were Christians. And sure, that's not murder, but he consented to the death of Stephen when Stephen was asked point blank about his beliefs and had no choice but to tell the truth. So if it's true that the law doesn't allow for this type of murder, then Paul broke the law of Moses and claimed to do it ignorantly, because according to him, he was blameless concerning the law. And that brings me to the second reason Paul might have chosen to be a murderer. The law did not grant him authority to murder anyone leaving Judaism, but Paul didn't understand the law and thought it gave him this permission. If Paul was indeed ignorant of the law, what makes Christians think he understands the will of Jesus? If he was that deluded, thinking the law gave him authority to murder, then why would anybody trust his wisdom about anything? After all, he basically turned everything Jesus said on its head. I won't get into that, but if we're honest, we all know it's true. So what do you think? Was Paul just an evil person, enjoying being a mass murderer? Was he so ignorant of the law, which he supposedly knew backward and forward, that he was confused enough to think murdering others was a good thing? Again, unless Paul was just evil, he was ignorant of the law, or today's Christians, at least the one who talked to me about this, are ignorant of the law. Christians like to talk about how easy the Bible is to understand. Even a wayfaring fool won't err in the way of salvation, they claim, and quote the Bible passage saying so. If that's the case, then we have one of two problems. One, Paul was a deliberate murderer, or two, he was unlearned and ignorant of the law. Either way, the man Christians looked to for religious doctrine and practice was evil or he was ignorant. Because we know he wasn't supposed to be doing this murdering. In fact, he wasn't supposed to be persecuting Christians at all, which he did in a large way. By the way, Christians today obviously don't understand their own law, since they're split into more than 45,000 denominations because of different interpretations of the law. More than that, Paul and the writers of the New Testament didn't know what they were talking about regarding Christianity. They thought Jesus was coming back in their lifetime. They thought they were living in the last hour. They thought the Thessalonians, who were being persecuted in the first century CE, would get relief, not when they died, but when Jesus came back in flaming fire. Jesus told the people living in Thyatira, again, people living in the first century CE, to hold fast till I come. He didn't say till you die, but till I come. Even Jesus was confused. Those people are dead. They can't keep holding fast. It's no wonder all of Christendom is confused, isn't it? By the way, lest anybody claim that Paul would have been right to murder people had Christianity not come along. But since it did, Paul's law he lived under didn't apply anymore. Well, let me say this. I suppose that would mean that, yes, Paul was ignorant. Not of the law of Moses, but of the law of Jesus. But here's the problem with that. The day before Jesus was resurrected, or the day before the kingdom supposedly came upon the apostles and the church was established, the law of Moses, which was Yahweh's will, gave people the right to murder Hebrews who defected, or at least who tried to get other people to defect. That's your God, Christians. That's who he is. It's how he rose, and it's evil. I think Paul was telling the truth. I think he was ignorant. Oh, he may well have been given permission by the law of Moses to murder Christians, so I'll join Yahweh in granting him mercy on that. But he was still ignorant, as he shows in his writings. However, I think there was an evil heart involved too. I mean, I just don't think you can carry out the wicked commands of the law of Moses without being wicked yourself. I certainly couldn't murder my child, or if he or she suggested that I serve a God other than Yahweh. Could you? Before I hush, I want to thank my new patron, David Reyes. I forgot to do that last week. And thank you all. Bye.